Now that we've seen a very general example of this guy on an island who has to dedicate his time between finding food and building a shelter, we're going to build what is known as an economic model. And that model is a way to kind of represent choices. And so we'll see many economic models throughout AP Microeconomics, and this is our very first one. And it is called the production possibilities. So what we're going to do is we're going to see how this economy, like we had our island economy, our Bob economy. So we have our island and we have Bob, and this economy has to make choices. This person, this system, this government, whatever it is, it has to make choices. And there's certain possibilities that exist, and there's other possibilities that just don't exist. They're not possible. So in economic models, we typically are showing the relationship between two different variables. And so we use the XY axis to show the relationship between these two variables. So this, we're going to say, is food production, let's say. And this is shelter production. We used hours in the day, but remember, what makes up food and shelter? Land, labor, and capital are what are needed to dedicate to create these goods. And these are again called the factors of production, which then makes sense as we're looking at production possibilities. So before we show the relationship between food and shelter, so we can kind of think about it a little bit. And as we talked about it before, remember, if I gain more of this, I must be giving up something. I must be losing some of this. And remember, that's called opportunity cost. So let's look at it with some numbers first. So let's say that we decide we're going to take all the time that we have, all the land that we have, all the labor that we have, and all the capital that we have. We're just going to make food. So we take every minute of every day, and we spend all of it on the production of food. So how much food can we produce? Well, we can just make up a number, but let's say we can produce 20 units of food, whatever that is, 20 meals. How much shelter can I produce at that same time? If all the land, all the labor, all the capital I have, if every waking moment I have is for food production, how much shelter can I produce? Well, that's easy. I can produce 0. I can't produce any because all of my resources are going to the production of food. Things are scarce. Therefore, I have to make choices. They're limited. There's an opportunity cost, and I can't make any shelter. So what about if I want to make, let's say, one shelter, one house, something like that? Can I still make 20 units of food and the one house? And remember, if I gain some of this one, I must have to give up some of this one. Remember, I have to give up something. There's an opportunity cost. So let's say I can only produce then 15 units of food or 15 meals. All right, that's good. Remember, but we can keep going. We can say I want to build a second shelter. Well, now how much? How much can I produce in food? Well, let's say instead of that, I can produce now, let's call it 9 units of food. All right, well, what about if I produce 3 shelter? Well, now what we're going to say is we can actually, that's all the resources I have, so I can't produce any food, right? So hopefully that relationship makes sense. What we just looked at is as I gain more of one, I give up more of the other one. So now let's look at it like this. We're going to model this in this relationship that we have over here with these two different variables. And so I could make, remember, I could make 1, I could make 2, I could make 3 different places for shelter. Or I guess I could have 0 on there as well. Now, how much food can I make with each one of those different possibilities? What's the most amount of food that I can make if I made 0 shelter? Well, we look at it right here, it's 20. So we're going to put 20 right up top here. And this dot is going to represent that combination right there. Okay. But what about the next one? If I decide, you know what, I'm gonna actually make that first shelter. So I make this first shelter. How much food can I make? Well, in that scenario, I can make like 15 units of food. So we're going to call that 15. We'll call that 10. We'll call that 5. And so 15.1 is going to be somewhere like right there. All right? What about the next one? So that's this one. Now if I want to make another shelter, right, it's going to be this combination right here. And so I'm going to be at 2, and we'll call it 9. So I'm going to be at something like that spot right there. And then 3 and 0 is this one. I'm going to be at that spot right there. All right? So our line is going to look something like that. Okay? Perfect. So what this does, this line represents our maximum possibility. Well, what if Bob wanted some possibility, like, let's pick a random spot. Let's say this spot right here. You know what, Bob really wants about 14 meals, but he also wants about 2.5 buildings, 2.5 homes, 2.5 shelters. Can he produce that combination right there? Can he have 14 and 2.5? Our answer is no. No. Why not? Because we have a limited amount of land, labor, and capital. It's outside of the maximum amount that is possible. And so no, he can't produce that spot right there. It's not feasible for him to do that. Well, what about if he was at, let's say, this spot right here? What if he wanted 10 meals and he only wanted 1 shelter? Could he have that combination of 10 and 1? The answer is yeah. Yeah, he could have 10 and 1, right? But is he using all of the resources that he has? The answer is no, right? Because he could gain more of each one of these, and he could be at a spot like that. He could be at, let's say, 14, 1.5. He could be there, which is more than the 10, 1. So that one's possible. It's just not maximum. Okay. All right. Let's erase. Let's think about this a little bit more. I'm gonna erase some of this stuff. Let's think about this a little bit more. Okay, what would happen if somehow Bob, somebody else came to the island, and Tom was there, right? There's Bob and Tom, right? What Bob and Tom? What do you think happens to the maximum possibility here? How much food do you think they could produce with more labor? What if there was another tree that grew? There were these 2 trees instead of the 1 original tree that we had. What if a machine was invented and that machine helped produce more food? Right? What would change? What would happen to the maximum possibility? Right? So what would change is that this line, you'd have an entirely new line. Right? It would be like if we changed all of our numbers that we had in our chart on the bottom right-hand side. Right? So this becomes, let's say, 30 and 0. And this becomes, let's say, 25 and 1. And this becomes, 15 and 2. And this becomes 10 and 3. And this becomes 5 and 4. Right? All of those are now options. Okay? And so what we see is a line that would be way out here like this. Oops, sorry. A line that's out here like this. Okay, this becomes the new maximum when we change the amount of land, labor, and capital that we had available. Right? That whole thing shifted outward. All right, well, what would cause this thing to shift inward? Well, let's say the tree died, the machine didn't work, Bob got sick, right? We have less land, labor, or capital, and it would move the whole line inward. Our max would change. Okay? So this is our production possibilities frontier model, and it shows how much we can produce with the given amount of land, labor, and capital that we have.